Yo, I'm Ace, and bro, Fairy Tail's Grand Magic games, they're hype as shit, bro. They're dope as hell. The arc itself is, your standard tournament arc. It's found in most shonen anime. These types of arcs tend to just bank off of seeing the characters' training pay off, and kind of just seeing strong characters in the series fight. Fairy Tail's iteration of this does this too, but it adds this other element to it. It's kind of like an emotional element to it, I guess, if that makes sense. It's a little bit hard to explain why it's hype without the context, so I'm gonna provide it. Of course, spoilers for Fairy Tail ahead, so keep that in mind. Alright, so in the arcs leading up to the Grand Magic Games, you see the Fairy Tail Guild would overcome adversary after adversary, trial and tribulations time after time. Whether it be the Gajio and the Phantom Lord Guild, Gelong as Tower of Heaven, the Oracion 6, and even a parallel dimension called Ellis. They ride high after high, and along with the cast, the viewer is also pretty happy, since, the guild can overcome anything as long as they've got each other. But shortly before the Grand Magic Games, Fairy Tail goes through the Tenro Island arc, and this arc is kind of framed and set up as the tournament arc, but it's interrupted by Zeref and other outside factors. We do see some dope fights there, like Gildarts vs Blue Note, and we see Natsu do some nutty things, but yeah, it ultimately just kind of ends up with the total failure and utter defeat of the Fairy Tail Guild. This prompts a flash forward in time, like 7 years, a time skip, basically. Now, usually when a time skip happens in anime, the protagonist and his surrounding cast get stronger, they train, and we see like a good, healthy progression of what the character is able to now do. Like, for example, One Piece, and how Luffy gets us upgraded gears, or like Naruto, he comes back and he gets like the stage mode shit or whatever. But with Fairy Tail, that doesn't really happen. And yeah, I kind of get how that sounds, like, oh dude, no way, we got a 7-year time skip and nothing happened, the cast was stagnant, they stay the same. What the fuck was the time skip for? Like, I get why you think that's so lame, but I think with the upcoming tournament arc, it actually lends itself pretty well, and they play off each other in a pretty dope way. And yeah, anyways, we fast forward 7 years and the once prosperous unbeatable guild is basically just in shambles, with a lot of its prominent guild members frozen in time and gone for 7 years. We see the actual building be in ruin, and a recurring character named Macao as a new guild master, but he's older, he seems stressed out and just not in good shape. Most of the guild has dissipated, like all the smaller members, they're just gone. And the other recurring guild members are kind of just struggling and they let themselves go. The state of the guild itself is actually a pretty bad situation as well. They are struggling financially and they are kind of just getting bitched around by this other guild in the area. But of course, the Fairy Tail members do return after those 7 years of being frozen in time. It's important to note though that the other members thought that the Fairy Tail guild had basically just straight up died. They weren't expecting them to come back, like sure, some of them were hopeful, and I'm sure in the beginning they were pretty hopeful, but as the 7 years went on, they were kind of just like, ah, damn, our friends are dead as hell. But yeah, the guild members come back and they're like, oh wow, yay, they're back, and they kind of just take care of the shit their guild that's been pressing in Fairy Tail, and that gives us like a small glimpse of hope, like hey, they were gone, now they're back, and they're still just as strong as before. We get a bit more reassurance of this when Natsu spars with a guild member and ends up beating them, but he does have to use like his new mode he got on Tenro Island, but he still beats him nonetheless, right? We do get one more arc before the Grand Magic Games, and it's, to me, I treat it as like a warm-up kinda. Don't get me wrong, they do fight like some world-ending peril and win, but I see it as kind of an arc to get them in shape, if that makes sense. Like, it's like, oh, hey, Fairy Tail has still got it, like we see them like actually be strong, like they save the world, right? And re-establish that, hey, Fairy Tail just had a fucking massive defeat, but they can still do stuff. But yeah, now on to the Grand Magic Games. The Fairy Tail Guild decides to join up to restore its former glory, and after the previous arc where of course they saved the world, we're kinda riding high again, But we're quickly met with reality. They have been gapped. To be fair, it has been like 7 years, but yeah, there are other guilds who are pretty much superior. And we do see that on display with the 3rd generation Dragon Slayers from Sabretooth, and other guilds like Lamia Scale, who are pretty up there in strength. Along with the Dark Guild in the mix, the Fairy Tail usuals are just definitely not going into it as favorites. So much so that they actually have like a Team B there for insurance. But yeah, the whole arc kind of just banks off emotional impact rather than just fights. It kind of just sells you on the idea that Fairy Tail is washed now and that you want to see it at play. I think this approach is cool as fuck for a tournament arc. It manages to set the guild up as the underdog in a natural ass way, because most of these arcs are just meant for fighting. Like for example, if we hadn't gotten the Tenro Island arc and if they hadn't been frozen for 7 years and went straight into this, there would be like no tension, right? We'd be like, oh, it's Fairy Tail, it's a tournament arc, they should wipe the floor with the competition. But actually having them lose before the major tournament and having the rest of the guild members be in like total ruin and just down bad for 7 years, it sets up like this cool instance where, yeah, Fairy Tail can save the world, they're strong as hell, but in this very moment they are pretty weak, pretty vulnerable, and it makes you want them to win like the entire time you're watching. There are dope ass fights and dope ass moments too, like seeing Urza push past her limits and going crazy, and other moments too, like actual loss, because they do lose sometimes throughout this tournament, like for example Lucy being bodied, and that kind of serves as a catalyst for Natsu to go insane and take on the 2v1 challengers as Dragon Slayers. Dude, that fight is actually like cool as fuck. The two Dragon Slayers are kind of cocky and like little shitters, and they say bratty stuff like, oh, we're better because we killed our dragons, and like they just act superior. Like, I get it, he's been gone for 7 years, but bro, it is Natsu. It'd be like, to do like a basketball analogy, right? It'd be like if Luka were just like, oh, fuck you, Braun, I'm better. Look at what I can do. And it's like, bro, that's LeBron. What are you? I get that you're Luka, but bro, that's LeBron. And yeah, Natsu just kind of slips on his Black Air Force Ones and returns the same energy, bro. It's so fucking. He does some of the dopest shit I've ever seen in like an anime before a fight, and the way he just handles it is so fucking sick. And it just kind of hits different now since we saw them basically just lose it all, and their surrounding cast just be in like total like ruin and be in shambles, and we're just trying to see them come back from it. Like, they're the underdogs now, right? Like, that's why it's so fucking cool, and it bangs off that so fucking hard, and I don't think I've really seen that. I mean, there's some instances in that in other tournament arcs, but I think this just does it so fucking well. It's not just that either. Like I said, it bangs off emotion more. Like, yeah, seeing Natsu thrive against all odds is dope, and like seeing Urza, like I said, push past her limits and do like some insane stuff, it's cool as hell. But there's also other dope moments that aren't really big heavy fights. I guess they are, but things like Jalal posing as Mystigun, that's fucking sick. Like, that's super cool, and he uses the same magic as him too, like to try and blend in. It's so dope. And seeing Loxus fight is also pretty memorable highlight for the arc. Like I said, it just bangs off of stuff that has happened before, like Mystigun, for example. How we lost him on LLS and we're not gonna see him again, and then it just brings him back. That's like one of the cool things that this arc does. But yeah, for sure tournament arcs are really prevalent in anime. Like, I'm not saying, oh wow, Fairy Tail did this wonderful thing with a tournament arc. Like, no, those things are fucking a dime a dozen in shonen. And I'll probably talk about other ones, like the first My Hero one. I think that one's fucking sick. But this one has always been a memorable one to me, and I feel like it just does it really fucking well. Like, I can't really compare it to other tournament arcs. I feel like this one just, it does it so well within the confines and context of the show. It's just something you gotta experience, to be honest with you. Just going through it on a binge and like going from Tenro to Grand Magic Games is just so fucking cool. It's so satisfying, bro. Wasn't really like a fucking grand analysis or anything. I kinda just wanted to talk about the Grand Magic Games since I saw a clip on it pop up on my recommended for YouTube, and I was like, oh dude, I should talk about this. And yeah, make sure to like the video, share the video, subscribe, just interact with the video in any kind of way, to be honest with you. But yeah, that'll be it for me. Later.